Today, we're diving into one of the most powerful ideas ever put to paper, from John Stuart Mill's famous essay on liberty. He was wrestling with a question that, honestly, feels more urgent now than ever. Where do we draw the line between my freedom and society's control? But here's the thing. Mill wasn't just worried about the usual suspects, like kings or governments. He saw a much sneakier danger creeping in. And this quote just cuts right to the heart of it. The real threat, he warned, wasn't just about locking up your body. It was something that could get inside your head, a kind of pressure that could, as he put it, enslave the soul itself. Pretty heavy stuff, right? You see, for centuries, the fight for liberty was, well, pretty straightforward. You were fighting against a king, an emperor, some guy with a crown. But Mill was writing as democracy was on the rise, and he realized the battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. The threat had just changed its costume. And this table really breaks it down. The old threat, that was the tyranny of the ruler. A king could throw you in jail, simple as that. But this new threat, what Mill called the tyranny of the majority, was way more subtle. It wasn't about laws, it was about social pressure. It wasn't a government, it was your neighbors, your friends, the culture around you. And its power was immense, because it didn't just punish your actions, it aimed to shape your very thoughts. So this is the key. The new danger was this crushing weight of what everyone else thinks. It's that invisible force that pushes everyone to be the same, to think the same, to act the same. It's a kind of social rulebook that's never written down, but everyone is expected to follow it. Or else. So what do you do about a problem like that? How do you fight back against this invisible, soul-crushing pressure to conform? Well, Mill came up with a solution. An idea he called one very simple principle that would completely change the game. And here it is, the harm principle. This is the absolute core of On Liberty. It's so clear. Society, whether it's the government or just your neighbors, can only step in and force you to do something against your will for one reason, and one reason only, to stop you from harming other people. That's it. Not because it would be better for you, not because it's the right thing to do, only to prevent harm to others. Mill doubles down with this incredible line. You are sovereign over yourself. You are the king or queen of your own mind, your own body. In that part of your life that only affects you, your independence should be absolute, total. So let's make this real. How does this play out? Well, take drunk driving. Does that risk harming others? Absolutely. So society is justified in stopping it. But what about just getting drunk in the privacy of your own home? It might not be a great idea for you, but does it directly harm someone else? No. So Mill says that's your business. Same logic applies to money. Defrauding people in business, that's a direct harm. But making some foolish decisions with your own paycheck, nope, that's on you, even if people disapprove. Now here's where it gets really interesting. For Mill, this wasn't just about some abstract right to be left alone. He believed that protecting this private bubble of freedom was actually the engine of all human progress. The only way society moves forward, he argued, is by letting people be different, by letting them try out new, weird, and wonderful ways of living. And his argument for absolute freedom of speech is just brilliant. He breaks it down into 4 killer points. First, that opinion you want to silence, it might actually be true. And who are we to assume we know everything? Second, even if an opinion is wrong, it probably has a little piece of the truth in it, and we need that collision of ideas to see the full picture. Third, if a truth is never challenged, it just becomes what he called a dead dogma. We repeat the words, but we have no idea why we believe them. And finally, without that debate, the idea itself loses its power and just becomes an empty phrase. This is why Mill thought progress literally needs eccentrics. It needs weirdos. It needs people who are willing to go against the grain. He called them the salt of the earth. Because without them, without their new ideas and strange experiments in living, society would just become a stagnant, boring pool. This quote just nails Mill's biggest fear. He looked around and saw that the danger wasn't that people were too wild or too individual. It was the exact opposite. People were becoming too similar, too afraid to stand out. They were asking, what's expected of me, instead of, what do I actually want? He saw custom and conformity as the biggest threats to humanity's future. Okay, so the principle sounds great, but let's be real, the hard part is always drawing the line in the sand. How do we know what's my business versus what's society's business? Well, Mill gives us a framework for that too. He basically divides life into 2 zones. First, you have the sphere of individuality. This is stuff that's mainly about you, your thoughts, your tastes, your life choices. In this zone, he says, freedom must be absolute. But then there's the second zone, the sphere of society. This is where your actions start to affect other people, and in that zone, society can step in. It all comes down to this. It's the old saying, right? Your right to swing your fist ends right where my nose begins. Mill's idea isn't about being selfish or ignoring others. It's about clearly defining that boundary. It's about not being, in his own words, a nuisance to other people. And this is why we're still talking about him. Because even though he wrote this over 160 years ago, his one simple principle is the very framework we use to argue about our biggest, messiest, most heated debates today. Think about it. When we talk about cancel culture, aren't we really asking if social pressure has become that tyranny of the majority Mill warned us about?
When we debate safe spaces on campus, aren't we trying to find the line between protecting people from harm and silencing the very dissent Mill thought was essential?
And what about hate speech laws? This is the ultimate Mill-style question. At what exact point does someone's speech stop being just an opinion and start becoming a direct act of harm? And that's the fundamental question Mill leaves us with. It's the one that echoes through all of these modern debates. Mill's harm principle doesn't give us the easy answers. What it does, and what makes it so timeless, is give us the essential, powerful, and enduring question we have to keep asking ourselves. Where is the line? This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.